This week, U.S. Cyber Command warns of Iran-linked hackers exploiting Outlook. New WannaHydra malware, a triple threat to Android. British Airways slapped with a record $230 million fine. Apple patches iMessage bug that bricks iPhones with out-of-date software. Zoom zero-day vulnerability. Jason Wood joins us for the expert commentary on firms that promised high-tech ransomware solutions almost always just pay the hackers. All that and more on this episode of Hack Naked News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security.
Welcome, everyone, to Hack Naked News, episode number 226 for July 9th, 2019. I am your host, Matt Alderman, sitting in again for Paul Asadorian. Register for our upcoming webcast with Viavi, ISC Squared, and Security Weekly's Evaluating Security Vendors Without Losing Your Mind by going to securityweekly.com/webcast. If you have missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find our on-demand library at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And now, the security news for this week. U.S. Cyber Command warns of Iran-linked hackers exploiting Outlook. U.S. Cyber Command posted on Twitter an alert about cyber attacks exploiting the CVE-2017-11774 vulnerability in Outlook. The timing of this alert raised eyebrows in the security community as the exploitation of this CVE is a favorite technique of APT33, the Iranian-backed hacking group. The flaw is a sandbox escape bug in Outlook that allows an attacker who already possesses the victim's Outlook credentials to change the user's homepage. That page, in turn, can have embedded code that downloads and executes malware when Outlook is opened. Fortunately, the bug was patched by Microsoft in October 2017, as long as you patched your systems. D-Link agrees to overhaul security and FTC settlement. D-Link has agreed to implement a comprehensive security program to settle accusations by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission claiming that the company failed to implement proper security mechanisms in its routers and IP cameras. The case stems from a 2017 complaint where the FTC stated the company failed to perform basic secure software development, including testing and remediation to address well-known and preventable security flaws, including the use of hard-coded login credentials and storing login credentials in clear, readable text on mobile devices. Additionally, D-Link will have to obtain independent assessments of its security program every 2 years over the next 10 years. New WannaHydra malware, a triple threat to Android. The latest variant of WannaLocker is a banking Trojan, spyware tool, and ransomware. The three-pronged threat, which Avast calls WannaHydra, is currently targeting users of 4 major banks in Brazil. But if it takes off, the malware could prove to be a major issue for Android users everywhere. The latest version works by presenting users with a fake message, urging them to sign into their accounts to address some account-related issues. Once installed, the malware collects device manufacturer, phone number, text messages, call log, photos, contact list, microphone audio data, and GPS location information. To avoid infection, Android users should only download apps from trusted developers on the certified app stores like Google Play and verify the number of downloads and the reviews for the app. DDoS attacker who ruined gamers' Christmas gets 27 months in prison. Austin Thompson, the 23-year-old hacker from Utah, who carried out massive DDoS attacks on Sony, EA, and Steam, gets a 27-month prison sentence. The hacker, also known as Derp Troll, pledged guilty back in November 2018 after he admitted to being a part of Derp Trolling, a hacker group that was behind the DDoS attacks. In addition to the prison sentence, Thompson was also ordered to pay $95,000 in restitution to one of the victims, Daybreak Games, formerly Sony Online Entertainment. Thompson is currently free on bond and has been ordered to surrender to authorities on August 23, 2019, in order to begin his sentence. Canonical GitHub account hijacked. Canonical, the company behind the Ubuntu operating system, confirmed over the weekend that one of its GitHub accounts was hacked. According to Canonical, there was a Canonical-owned account on GitHub whose credentials were compromised and used to create repositories and issues, among other activities, on July 6th. Canonical has removed the compromised account from the Canonical organization in GitHub and is still investigating the extent of the breach, but there is no indication at this point that any source code or PII was affected. Furthermore, the Launchpad infrastructure, where the Ubuntu distribution is built and maintained, is disconnected from GitHub. British Airways slapped with a record $230 million fine. A proposed $230 million fine on British Airways after a data breach would be the biggest GDPR penalty yet. On Monday, the Information Commissioner's Office, a UK privacy watchdog organization, said it will fine British Airways $230.5 million for infringements of GDPR. In September 2018, British Airways experienced a data breach that impacted 500,000 customers. The fine would be the largest levy by GDPR, surpassing the fine against Google for $57 million. Privacy experts say that the penalty represents a wake-up call for companies when it comes to ramifications for data privacy incidents. Apple patches iMessage bug that bricks iPhones with out-of-date software. Google Project Zero finds Apple iMessage bug that bricks iPhones running older versions of the company's iOS software. Apple patched a high-severity iMessage bug in iOS 12.3 on May 13, 2019, that can be exploited by an attacker who sends a specially crafted message to a vulnerable iOS device. iOS devices receiving the malicious message are rendered inoperable or bricked. The proof-of-concept attack method targets a method in IM core that can throw an NS exception due to a malformed message containing a property with key IM extension pay localized description text key with a value that is not a NSS string. As of last month, 47% of iOS devices worldwide are running a vulnerable version of iOS. It's time to update your iOS devices. Serious security flaw with Zoom could allow websites to hijack Mac webcams. On Monday, security researcher Jonathan Litschu publicly disclosed a serious zero-day vulnerability in conferencing software Zoom. This vulnerability allows any website to forcibly join a user to a Zoom call with their video camera activated without the user's permission. To simplify connectivity and avoid a security update in Safari 12, Zoom installed a web server on your local machine running on port 19421. However, the web server is not removed when you uninstall Zoom, meaning that anyone who has previously installed Zoom and removed it still has this vulnerability. Zoom is still working on a fix. We'll take a short break, then get our expert commentary for this week from Jason Wood.
The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome back to Hack Naked News. I am your host, Matt Alderman. We welcome Jason Wood as he joins us today for expert commentary on firms that promised high-tech ransomware solutions almost always just pay the hackers.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, this was a fun couple of articles to read because we've talked about ransomware an awful lot here on Security Weekly and across a number of the shows. And everybody's comment is yeah, don't pay the bad guys. Don't pay the ransom. So, you imagine one of your systems gets popped. You decide that you're not going to pay the ransom for this. Unfortunately, you don't have a good backup of the affected system. So you decide to go out and contact a data recovery firm that says they specialize in recovering data from ransomware attacks. And the recovery firm is able to actually go ahead and unlock your data and you pay them an agreed upon fee. And you pay that actually upfront on the condition of it being unlocked. Well, congratulations, you've probably just paid an attacker or the bad guy itself for the recovery of your data. Turns out at least 3 firms have been identified by a site called ProPublica.org that essentially offer this service of recovering your data from ransomware, and all they're doing is acting as a middleman between you and the bad guys. Essentially, they've decided that people don't like the idea of trying to figure out how to get Bitcoin, how to talk to the attackers, or just the idea of paying them money in general. And so they've stood up services or businesses that handle this for you, but without telling you that that's exactly what they're doing. So what they will do is essentially you contact one of these firms and say, hey, I've got this data that's locked up. They pass them some information that they request to help them do analysis, in quotes, on the data. And they turn around, they contact the ransomware contact information provided in the note and try and negotiate down the price of the ransom. Once they've negotiated a price, they then mark that price up, and that's what they ask you to pay to recover your data. So here's an interesting example of how this worked. An information security researcher named Fabian Wosar decided to investigate these firms. And in one case, in his initial case, he basically pretended to be the attacker and the victim at the same time. He created fake ransomware and went to one of his systems and encrypted and locked up his data using his fake ransomware, created a fake ransom note, including things like common misspellings and whatnot that would indicate that this looked like somebody that English wasn't their primary language, and said, hey, I don't want to pay the ransom for any of this. Can you unlock my data? And they said, well, yeah, let me see what we can do. And they said they'd be performing analysis on this. So he contacted this firm, which actually is located in Scotland in this case. There are a couple of others in the US. And they performed their analysis. Now, what happened behind the scenes is immediately after contacting this firm and hearing that they would be performing their analysis, his attacker persona email address gets contacted by the data recovery company. Now, they used a Proton mail email address to obscure the fact that they were a company, but Wasar included a identifier in the ransom note that was necessary to determine whether, how to unlock it, what to identify the encryption key that would be needed. And so he knew that he was talking to the data recovery firm. That's the only place that this had been disclosed to. Essentially, the firm said that they wanted to pay the ransom, but how much would it cost? And he responded back that it would cost $1,200 in Bitcoin. The firm negotiated this down to 900. They tried to go down to 500, and he came back with 900, or it's saying that he would walk away otherwise. Once they got this firm response from the attacker, Wasar, they responded back to victim Wasar and said, hey, we can get your data back. Isn't that fantastic? It'll only cost you $3,950, or roughly 4 times what the negotiated price was to get the data back or to pay the ransom. And they said basically that they would require the funds up front, though, of course, but that if they weren't able to decrypt the data, they would return the funds back to him. So they're essentially gambling on the idea that when they pay the $900 in Bitcoin to the attacker, they'll get a legitimate key and they'll be able to decrypt the data and then walk away with $4,000 for essentially being a middleman and facilitating paying the ransom. Now, victim Wasar pushed back and was on the idea of, hey, well, how are you doing this? I really don't want to pay these guys. All they did respond back with was instructions on how to make payment. At that point, Wasar broke off all communications and didn't pay out any money. ProPublica, when investigating this, contacted the firms that were involved in this. In particular, this firm in this example, they responded by toning down some of the language on their site to kind of distance themselves from this type of service. Another firm made the comment that basically, well, this is what we do. We've never really pretended otherwise, that they are essentially acting as a middleman for it. So essentially, these folks, though, or these companies are taking advantage, at least in my opinion, of the situation where people don't want to deal with paying the ransom. They don't want to deal with getting Bitcoin or things like that. And maybe they're able to stomach the idea of paying more money to get their data back to somebody who's legitimate rather than to the attackers. One thing that was interesting to note in one of the articles, they traced back some Bitcoin that was paid in response to a ransom to one of these firms. It went to the Bitcoin wallet it went from this firm to the Bitcoin wallet that was specified in the attacker's ransom note. They followed it through a number of different wallets, and they actually ended up sitting in a wallet that was sanctioned by the U.S. OFAC list, which essentially tries to trace money being used in terrorism and other illicit activities and provide sanctions of those to businesses, saying you can't do any business with this organization. Now, the firm didn't know that. It went through a number of intermediaries before it got there. But it is interesting to see how things trailed back to places that weren't necessarily expected or intended. So what do you think? Dodgy? Should be illegal, but isn't apparently? They are able to recover the victim's data. They're just not doing it in a way that we would expect. They're saying that they're able to use their own tools to recover this data, but in fact, they're most of the time just turn around and paying the ransom to the attacker. I mean, sure, they don't have to go ahead, they get their data back, the end user, but and they don't have to buy the Bitcoin, they don't have to talk to the attacker, but they're not getting what they expect. To me, this seems like it's at a minimum a little slimy to pretend that, hey, we're going to use our proprietary tools to unlock your data, and really all they're doing is just paying the bad guys for it. The articles themselves are actually very interesting to read. Got the links in the show notes. You can check them out on propublica.org. But if you have any thoughts on this, I'd be curious to see what you think. Should this be illegal? Should it not? Drop me a line on Twitter, Jason_Wood. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Jason, I think the moral of the story is you're paying one way or the other, right? You're either paying the ransom or you're paying somebody to pay the ransom for you. maybe the only thing you get in the middle is negotiation. I think it's a little shady. I would like them to be a little more upfront and honest so companies know exactly what they're paying for. But
yeah,
that's my take on this one.
what I thought was interesting that the attacker, Massar, his persona, I mean, he offered $1,200 for the Bitcoin, and then the company turned around and said they could recover it for $4,000. So definitely some crazy markup happening here.
Yeah, definitely. Jason, always a pleasure getting your insights on Hack Naked News. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Hack Naked News.